Speaking of foreign nations, yesterday, something really important happened. And all the headlines are focused on the optics and the aesthetics and the visuals, which is fine, but it's deeper than that. Yesterday was the 80-year anniversary of Victory Day, or essentially the founding of the Chinese Communist Party. The visuals were obviously impressive. Look, countries, they do military parades quite well. They're able to mobilize everything without any of the media clamoring or yammering, and it was impressive. From the nuclear arsenal to their investments in the military, the Chinese Communist Party wanted to put on full display for the rest of the world, and especially it really was all designed for an audience of one. The military parade was really designed for one person, and that person, of course, is President Donald Trump. The Chinese were doing, as you can see, propaganda of their bombers and of their aircraft. They're investing billions and billions of dollars in their military. Now, their military is still a fraction of our entire military investment. It's still about $200 to $300 billion a year. However, you have to wonder, even though they spend a fraction that we do, they probably don't have the bloat and the waste and the government contractors that we do. You have to wonder if they're able to spread that a little bit more than we do. We waste a ton of money on our military, a ton of money on Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. However, I think there is definitely still an admission from independent analysts that we have military weaponry and technology that they still do not have. We pay soldiers a ton of money. They do not. They're able to draft anyone they want. They're a country of 770 million able-bodied people and a country of well over 1 billion individuals. They have hypersonic missiles. We may be behind on some weapons. They might have hypersonic missiles that we don't have, by the way. I'm putting these visuals up on screen here because we have focused on a lot of different topics, mass migration, the Islamism rising in the West. But I think what yesterday should be a reminder is a little bit of a early fall wake-up call. We already know that the Chinese Communist Party is a great threat to us. But me even saying that is important. Let's ask the very simple question. What is China? Is China our friend? Are they a rival like Joe Biden called them? Are they an adversary? I think they're an enemy of the United States of America. I've said it once and I'll say it again. Now, does that mean I believe that we should go to a kinetic conflict against them? Of course not. But we need to start treating them at the very least like a serious rival, at the very least. The Chinese Communist Party just threw an inside fastball. That was a brushback pitch yesterday. This is a much tougher rivalry than the Cold War. And we just got to be honest about it. The Soviet Union was hobbled by a terrible, terrible economy. You see, the Soviet Union, they were pure ideologues. They really were. The Soviet Union had a council of actual Marxists that refused to ever embrace market principles. They were actual ideologues. The Chinese economic model is a lot different. It's far more pragmatic. They're basically what works, what makes us rich. If we have to liberalize some areas, we will. But if we have to be totalitarian in other ways, we'll also do that. The Chinese Communist Party's economy is still not as big as ours. Still not. The latest GDP numbers show the Chinese Communist Party's maybe around $18 to $20 trillion. We're around $27 to $28 trillion. We owe a lot more money, by the way. Our national debt is way above the Chinese Communist Party national debt. Remember, the USSR was a multi-ethnic mess, which is why it collapsed. China is overwhelmingly Chinese, and China is very nationalist, and China is in a moment. You have to look at where is the moment in empire. And next year, we celebrate our 250th anniversary, our 250th birthday as a nation. Well, since we're celebrating our 250th birthday, that's about as long as empires last. It's about the expiration date. The Chinese Communist Party is at year 80. I want you to think about where we were in year 80. Year 80, we were fighting a civil war. Year 80, we were still trying to find our national identity. Once we got through the Civil War, we then had basically an uninterrupted rise to a superpower with, Industrial Revolution, World War II, but we did not have serious existential threats to the homeland post-Civil War. Once we got through that Civil War right around our 80th birthday, approximation, then we were able to basically have a glide pattern up towards being the superpower of the 19th century, late 19th century, 20th century and, of course, now the 21st century. Those two oceans in Canada and Mexico being next to us are quite helpful. And, of course, we've made mistakes. We've slipped in some ways, but we are still the world superpower, and we still have this window of opportunity. We still have this window where we have a great president, we have a mandate, we have a nationalistic undercurrent in our country where we need to have a very serious moment and say, what exactly is China? Why are we not treating them in the way we should be? Or maybe we should not be treating them that way. President Donald Trump had some very harsh words for the Chinese Communist Party today. He said, I was not happy in many ways. He said, I was not happy with what I saw, and I know it was for me. I was very impressed, but I was not. He had some very harsh words today. President Trump is rebuilding our military, but you have to wonder, for every $1 that we spend in our military, I would just conjecture the Chinese Communist Party is able to probably spend like 25 cents. I bet they get way more bang for their buck on military spending than we do. And we can't always see this in terms of money. That's a very important thing. This is about who is going to win and own the 21st century. We need to see this in terms of real strength. Are we innovative? Are we merit-based? Are we entrepreneurial? Are we unified? Are we strong? Are we aspirational? Forget all the economic data. Right now, yes, we have the incumbent advantage. Can we make stuff? It takes, just for example, we're doing this construction project at Turning Point USA to install a gate. And it is the most bureaucratic. It's taken literally like a year and a half to install a very simple gate. And I turned to my team the other day, outside of this whole Victory Day parade, I said, in China, this would take like a week. In China, this would just take a week. You just wave a hand and you get it done. Now, in some ways, that's bad. It would probably not be up to code or whatever. But they're able to source rare earth minerals. They're able to build new factories. They're able to roll out new robots. We increasingly have difficulty doing those things. Now, I'm not painting a doomerist picture. There's a lot of advantages we have over the Chinese Communist Party. But I got to be honest, when I went to a national park over the weekend, Sedona. It's actually not a national park, national forest. And there was products sold by the U.S. government. This drove me nuts. And this is not a criticism of President Trump. He inherited it from Joe Biden, but we got to fix it. The Department of Interior is selling merchandise made in China. Our own U.S. government is selling merchandise that is made in China. We don't make stuff anymore, but we should. In order for us to keep talking about China, it's very important that all of you in the audience know the name and the book, first Francis Fukuyama, and the book, The End of History and the Last Man. It was published in 1992. Remember the context of when this book was published. This book was published right after the fall of the Soviet Union. This was peak neoliberal arrogance. This was about the crescendo of the ruling class of the West that believed that this was the end of all human government, that liberal democracy had emerged as literally the final form of human government. The claim wasn't that history literally ends, but that the ideological evolution has reached its endpoint. No rival system at the time in 1992 seemed capable of challenging liberal democracy in legitimacy or performance. We assumed the American way had won forever. And I was raised in this context. I was told by teachers, I was told by professionals, Charlie, the more that we trade with China, soon they're going to be wearing Levi jeans and having McDonald's in Tiananmen Square, and they'll be listening on their iPods. And once they do that, they're going to embrace free speech, they're going to embrace American values, and they will de-radicalize and decouple from totalitarianism. This book, The End of History and the Last Man by Francis Fukuyama, without a doubt, was one of the most important, arrogant theses of the 1990s. It set the tone for the American ruling class. Because the wall had fallen, the enemy of the Soviet Union collapsed. We did it without having to go to a kinetic war. It felt as if we did not just win a war, but we won an ideological battle, and boy, did we get cocky. Our leaders assumed anybody who came to America from China will decide America's way is better than China's, and either join our team or fight to make China be on our side. But if you really think about it, if you come here today from China, what are you likely to think? Our cities are filthy, they're murderous, they're dangerous. And as we have declined in virtue in our country, it's much harder to have liberty when you do not have virtue. When you do not have a virtuous people, when you do not have strong families, when you do not have people going to church, liberty quickly becomes license. Bill Clinton articulated this best. Bill Clinton celebrated the entrance of the Chinese Communist Party into the World Trade Organization. I want you to put up the B-roll again of the Chinese military, please. The Chinese military with their tanks and their missiles rolling through the streets. You guys paid for that. This is paid for by the U.S. citizen. This is paid for by your Beanie Babies. This is paid for by your baseballs. This is paid for by your textiles. Hey, that's paid for by your vitamin C and by your antibiotics. Bill Clinton helped design this order, but this was all because of Fukuyama's argument. This is very important. Fukuyama gave them the arrogance that if we started trading with China, we would get super rich, the economic elite would then be able to have more capital, and then China would liberalize, and the whole world would live in liberal, democratic harmony. That sounds so dumb when I say it today now in 2025, but that's exactly the context of which all these decisions were made. World Trade Organization, NAFTA, Play Cut 393.
Bringing China into the WTO is a win-win decision. It will protect our prosperity, and it will promote the right kind of change in China. It is good for our farmers, for our manufacturers, and for our investors. Encouraging China to play by international rules, I say again, is an important step toward a safer, saner world.
Now, instead of China changing, we've actually become more like China. Not in the good ways, by the way. Less free speech, more oligarchic governance, an untouchable billionaire class. We became more like them. They did not adapt. They did not liberalize. This is where all the experts, again, which should just be completely discounted, they're like, well, you can't have economic liberty without personal liberty. Oh, yeah, you can. China's proven you can. You can own stuff and be hyper-materialistic and have no other personal freedom. You can go to the mall and shop and do stuff and still not be able to go to church. The 1990s, Francis Fukuyama, end of history, Bill Clinton, the dot-com era, we won. And instead of entering the victory with humility, we also did the 1990 Immigration Act. We opened up our borders to the entire world. And now in 2025, we are reckoning with the consequences of the cockiness of the leaders of the 1990s. So much of what we are living through is because of the arrogance and the pride of a ruling class in America that saw the wall fall in Berlin and said, we won, baby. Bring in the foreigners. Import the plastic. Make us rich. It's the end of history. Turns out history was just getting started.